بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا ولإخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين. صلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. Okay, where are we? So we are here, the unreality of movement. So we have been talking about appearances and reality, and the relationship between appearance and reality and unreality and ideality. Okay, so the unreality of movement. Yes, so unreality, what does he actually mean? So unreality of movement means the unreality of an independent space. So given our discussion, this sentence can mean many things, depending on what we mean by unreality here and what Iqbal means by unreality here. Okay. So unreality of the movement means the unreality. So unreality, if we literal meaning would be real motion is deceptive, that there's actually no motion, but we see something that resembles motion. The other thing it can mean motion is real, but its appearance Zeno held that movement is only a deceptive. So it is appearance, but not deceptive appearance. It is appearance, but so motion is a reality, but it's not as it is in itself that we see, but obviously we see as it appears to us. So we cannot reduce the reality of motion to what appears to us. So that's a totally different thing from the first one. Okay. And the third one can mean the unreality of movement, mean ideality of movement. For example, and Kantian says the movement is real, but it is ideal in the sense that the structure of a mind is that we see things according to these concepts of motion and movement and non-movement, or movement and rest, and they are real, but in the sense of ideal. So they are transcendentally real. Or would we say this transcendently ideal? I'm not sure at the moment. But there is a reality behind that, but we don't have access to that reality. So these are three different positions. I think that's just which are these three possibilities. I thought of it in the context of what we said before. But if we think harder, maybe we can come up with other possibilities. Um, so what I want to say is, what he's saying here, the unreality of movement means the unreality of an independent space can mean three different things depending on what we mean by unreality. In front of the motion, and in front of motion, and uh, unreality in front of independent space. Okay, so the unreality of space, the unreality of movement means the unreality of independent space. Now, another thing to think about is the meaning of independent here. What does independent means here? Because independent space can mean absolute. And absolute can have different meanings as well. So, for example, both Kant and Newton think that space is absolute. But for Newton, it is a real absolute. But for Kant, it is ideal absolute. Absolute in the ideal sense. So it's not clear what does independent space means here. And so unless this is really specified clearly, it's hard to think about whether the claim that the unreality of movement means the unreality of an independent space. So it depends on so many factors that it's probably not worth it to um, try to decipher any further this sentence. Uh, but we will keep it in mind, and if it becomes clear in later lines and passages, uh, um, um, what does independent and reality mean in this context, then we can try to think about the relationship between movement and space a bit further. Because just casually, so for example, it seems intuitively there must be some room between two things for them to be able to move, even if there is an independent space. So you need room between things in order for them to move. That seems intuitively plausible or even obvious. But that's not what he's saying, obviously. So if there's no independent space, what does that mean? Independent from things? Or independent from matter? It's not clear. So for example, there's no independent space. Is that the movement itself creates a space? So some sort of matter and energy um, throughout, and there are things which are present in that space, I guess. So the movement itself is creating a space in a way. And if there is some sort of energy, dark energy, some sort of a matter, and there are other material things which are contained in that matter, so they can make room. So it seems plausible that so there's a flow that's made up of matter. Things can, you know, move on that flow. Now, in the atmosphere around the things, what is there? There are some sort of matter. There is some sort of air and atmospheric um, gases, or they are present there, and the thing can move. So it's not clear. I mean, it seems that things. So what you need is actual room. As long as the room is there, whether you have independent space or not, it seems like there can be some movement. But that's just um, my own intuition. Might be true or might not be, but in order to determine the meaning of Allama Iqbal's sentence, we need to know a lot more about the meaning of those words he is using, or those terms they're using, which we just mentioned. Okay, let's go back to the text. Okay, so Muslim thinkers. That's a strange word, Muslim thinkers. What does he mean by Muslim thinkers? Of the school of Ash'ari. Well, Ash'ari did not believe in the infinite divisibility of space and time. With them, space and time motions are made up of points and instants which cannot be further subdivided. Thus, they proved the possibility of movement on the assumption that infinitesimals do exist. I guess that's what they call juzla yatajazza, the smallest thing which can't be. So Muslim thinkers of the school of Ash'ari did not believe in the infinite divisibility of space. And so let's first talk a bit about what Muslim thinkers they mean, and what a school mean, and what a Al-Ash'ari school means in the context of Islam. Tradition, because not many people clearly understand the meaning of these terms, or these terms, I guess. So when we say Muslim thinkers, that's obviously not a correct terminology because it's too general, too generic. What we can say Muslim thinkers means Muslim scholars. They are Muslim scholars. Okay, but here we are talking about, so Muslim scholars, they are invariably scholars in the sense of they're multidisciplinary scholars. So they might be specialists, but that specialization doesn't mean narrowness or limiting oneself to a particular discipline at the expense of other disciplines. So they're Muslim scholars. They're schooled in a curriculum which is encyclopedic. So they study different Islamic disciplines and the disciplines which are instrumental in understanding those disciplines. And also, as Muslim scholars, you need to understand the reality, because without understanding the reality, whether it's a social reality or natural reality, you can't implement or you can't apply um, Islamic teachings to a particular occurrence, whether that particular event with a particular occurrence, a particular event within a social world or a natural world. So that's important. So there are three things here. So there are three things which a Muslim scholar, three types of knowledges, three types of information. Muslim first is nusus, the knowledge of nusus is text. Quran, Sunnah, which include Asar Sahaba or Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, and Ijma, because they are all Hujjah. And Ijma is the most important because it's in the light of the Ijma. So that's history, Islamic history, and tradition and continuity, etc., within which you situate any legitimate innovation. So that's the first thing. So you need to know nusus. You need to know instrumental disciplines like language, rhetoric, logic, philosophy, etc. And that would include the knowledge of contemporary human disciplines, be they natural discipline focus on natural discipline, the natural world or social world. And number three is what was number three? Reality. They need to understand the reality, social world around them. But reality changes. So that's what you mean by ijtihad. Unless you, so the same nusus, the application changes according to the new reality, to whether that's reality, the natural reality or social reality. And your understanding of the nusus also changes based on your understanding of the reality. So this is a Muslim scholar. Now they can have their different focus, but you need to know some. You need to know the basics of all these three aspects of human knowledge and disciplines in order for you to be called a Muslim scholar. Okay. Now, once we have understood this, when he talks about Muslim thinkers, he might be talk about Muslim philosophers, those scholars who study philosophy in a more specific and concerted way. Otherwise, every Muslim scholar since philosophy was introduced to the Islamic world has to study some sort of philosophy. unless he is has the basic knowledge of philosophy and its terminology, he will not be able to understand even Islamic uh, texts which deal with issues which involve those disciplines. Or you can mean al-mutakallimin. And al-mutakallim obviously needs to be a philosopher, need to study philosophy, but al-mutakallimism is more than philosophy in the sense that the purpose of ilm al-kalam, with all its different schools, is manifold. First instance, it is depending on your definition of kalam. So, for example, a positive aspect of ilm al-kalam is to independently justify or ground truth of Islamic, fundamental Islamic creed or dogma in some sort of al-aql or reason. Obviously, a reason is a particular conception of al-aql, but I'm using it just to give you an idea. Intellect, maybe, not reason, because reason is a specific type of or a specific understanding of rationality or intellect or al-aql. So, for example, a mutakallim, in a sense, brackets belief in God and first establish that God exists. Brackets the belief that the Prophet is the true Prophet and establish independently the high probability of Prophet being the true Prophet. And once he has done that, then he earns as a mutakallim a right to use a vast array of intellectual instruments to justify the rest of Islamic creed. That's one thing. This is a positive aspects. And the second thing is to defend Islam rationally, intellectually, against internal doubts and external intellectual objections against Islam. And in order to do that, obviously, you need to understand opposite views, philosophical, non-philosophical, depending on which change according to time. So, ilm al-kalam is a vast disciplines. And then there are schools. By school, we mean just like universities, historical schools like positivists and rationalists and empiricists. These type of schools they are. They're not schools in the sense of religious sects. But the schools, Ashari is a school. Mu'tazila is a school of Muslim thinkers. Hanbali is a school of Muslim mutakallimin. There are three big ones, but then within them there are schools. So the school doesn't mean that there's a the school in a university. It doesn't mean that every positivist has the same views about the same thing. They have some general similarities, but within the similarity there is diversity of view, etc. So Ashari is a big school, and within this school there are many schools and many different scholars, and the variation is horizontally as well as vertically, like historically as well as space and time, And that's the same for any schools in other Islamic disciplines. So for Maliki school is a school of fiqh, but within Maliki school there are at least 5 sub schools. Not all of them are well and alive. We might be well and alive throughout the history. Some might, become more popular, more prominent, more. Some others might extinct, might decline. But no one is left which adhere to that school among scholars, for example. But these schools, they are ways of dealing with or methodologies, different methodologies to deal with the same sort of issues. That's why they call school. And within a school, there are variety, there's diversity. Okay. So that's important as well. So when we attribute something to Ashari school, there might be a lot of different views about that. But that attribution might apply to certain Ashari scholars or certain Ashari views at certain point in history. Okay. And in this sense, Kalam is also not equivalent to Islamic creed, because Kalam is a way to defend Islamic creed. But we will talk about this way to Islam. So there's one creed, but philosophically you can understand this creed and defend it and think. Depending on your philosophical position, you might think that an independent space is necessary for example, belief in God. But that belief in independent schools can't be at the same level as a belief in one God, for example, because this connection you just made up, it's a human connection. It can be wrong. And depending on change in your philosophical method, position, opinion, you might think that independent space is not needed for belief in God, for example. I mean, I've just made up this example. But we will take up this important point in the next reading, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. وصل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. وربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.